Hello, welcome to our session on rewiring talent, how to prepare the workforce for an AI-powered world. My name is Marci Paino. I am Cisco's Chief Learning Officer and head of our Enterprise Learning and Growth team, and I am also the lead of the AI ICT Consortium, and I am thrilled to be joined today by a few of our member partners, and we are going to embark on an exciting dialogue around the research that we've done together in partnership. Before we dive in, why don't we go ahead and introduce ourselves? Do you want to start, Lydia?
Sure. I'm Lydia Logan. I'm the Vice President for Global Education and Workforce Development at IBM, sitting in Corporate Social Responsibility.
Anshul, Sonak, Intel Corporation. I am a non-engineer who got a title of principal engineer, so don't ask me why. Working in a tech company, but in a cross-functional discipline. So I manage for Intel global public-private partnerships with government and academia. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Karthik Suri. I'm the Chief Product Officer at Cornerstone, Workforce Agility, Skilling, and Learning Company. I'm a recovering engineer.
Awesome. So before we dive in, we wanted to get a sense of who our audience was so that we can kind of tailor our discussion for you all. So by a show of hands, how many of you are here from corporate learning? Couple? Okay. How about academia? A few more. All right. How about startup? Startup company, okay. Ed tech? Okay, we've got quite a cross here. Did I miss anybody?
Press?
Media.
Media?
Media? Awesome. All right, so before we dive into the conversation, I'm gonna just review with you some of the key highlights of the AI ICT Consortium. So the consortium came together as a group of 10 leading tech companies to really study the impact of AI on the workforce around us. And we had some advice. Oh, the slide got kind of messed up there, but you can see the member partners here are Accenture, Cisco, Eightfold, Google, IBM, Indeed, Intel, Microsoft, SAP, and our newest member is Skyhive by Cornerstone. We also have consortium advisors, which is kind of small there, so I'll read from my paper if you don't mind. It's AFL-CIO, Communications Workers of America, Digital Europe, European Vocational Training Association, SME United, and Chain 5. And so this group of thought leaders came together to study the impact of AI on the workforce. So what we did was we studied 7 ICT job families, which turned into 47 of the top most in-demand ICT job roles in the marketplace. We were focused really on the US and European economies as we studied these job roles. And we looked at everything from entry to mid-level to senior level roles. And we looked at the job descriptions and broke them down by tasks and then mapped them to skills and then looked at what of these tasks will get automated or augmented with the onset of AI. And what we found was that, that there was going to be a significant impact on the workforce, which is probably no shock to all of you. So some of the key findings that we'll dig into too as a panel here, over 90%, so it's actually 92.5% of the 47 job roles are expected to experience either moderate or high transformation due to the advancements of AI. 37% of entry-level positions and 40% of mid-level positions of the analyzed jobs are expected to have high levels of transformation. And what we found was that there were really some essential common foundational skills that were required or increasing in relevance across all of the roles that we studied. So of course, AI literacy, data fundamentals, and prompt engineering. And then what we also found, and probably what you've heard a lot at this conference, is that there's a complementary set of durable human skills that we're seeing increase in relevance. So things like critical thinking and problem solving, we really need to emphasize where we spend our time and energy from a development perspective. As we think about the future of the consortium and what we'll study in the next iteration, we will be focused on 3 priorities. So we're going to study more questions. So obviously, we know now that all the jobs are going to be impacted in some way, shape, or form by the onset of AI. So we're going to start to study some additional questions around the impact across the G7 economies, the different types of skills that are emerging, and the difference between what we're seeing from an entry level to mid-year to senior career levels, as well as what differences are we seeing in the skills required for people leaders versus individual contributors, and how does that evolve in a world where we're seeing teams be made up of more combination of AI and humans together. So that's going to be our next iteration of our report. We are also going to be publishing an AI workforce playbook, which will be a series of frameworks and or methodologies that other organizations can pick up to really help them drive AI adoption within their organizations, as well as key case studies across our organizations that we've gathered around success stories for how we've been able to drive AI adoption, not just for those in the highly technical roles, but also for the everyday AI user that we know will really need to ramp up quite quickly. And then the final piece is all around this skills taxonomy, or a skills dictionary, as I prefer to call it, where we really set kind of a common language around the AI skills that we need to develop across the workforce. And we will be looking at how we kind of do this in a unified way across other forums and consortiums that have gathered, so that we make sure that we're starting to get to a more unified approach in how we talk about skills and not create additional noise in the system that is what is proliferating today. So with that backdrop, let's go ahead and jump into our discussion. All right, so the consortium report provides actionable insights for employers to leverage. So what are the key highlights for you, and how has your organization implemented some of those highlights?
Go ahead, Lydia.
All right, so for us, it provided that actionable framework we could use. So we have a commitment to skill 30 million people by 2030, and 2 million of those people in AI before the end of 2026. We have a program called Skills Build. It's at skillsbuild.org, and we offer that for free around the world. This report helped to inform what we provide, how it's shaped, and what we're recommending to learners. So we were able to take the report and immediately apply it to the programs that we're offering. We have, all kinds of upskilling initiatives that are happening inside IBM for IBMers, but through corporate social responsibility, these are the programs that we're offering externally for people who may not have those opportunities either at work or in their formal learning or through other pathways. So this was a great opportunity for us to take it and apply it immediately.
From Intel's standpoint, way back in 2020, much before the AI wave was coming in, we also came up with our own North Star goal of partnering in 30 countries, 30,000 institutions to train 30 million people for current and future job by 2030. Now that North Star really got a big push because of the report. When you really see the data, as Marci was showing, 92% of ICT jobs getting impacted in some ways. So when you start thinking about it, all jobs are eventually becoming digital jobs. And when we say digital job, it will have AI inserted, right, at a task level. So what we did last year after this report came out was pick key job creating sectors in US industry as an example. So manufacturing, healthcare, transportation, so on and so forth. We created our new range of courses, AI for cybersecurity, AI for manufacturing, AI for agriculture. And some of the skills which a software engineer will require going forward, like sustainability skill, like accessibility skill, like applied ethics skills. We created a whole range of courses on that. So some industry specific, some industry vertical, as well as some industry horizontal skills. We started offering to higher education, community colleges, and so on and so forth. And as we speak, in last 1 year, we have reached more than 127 colleges, out of which more than 40% of the colleges have either 4-year or a 2-year AI associate degree programs based on this. So that's a great progress, but there's a lot more to be done.
I'll add a little bit more. As we are one of the newer members of this and one of the few software vendors with the skills vendors in the consortium, as we started digesting the report in parallel, we were looking at some of our own skilling products and initiatives, SkyHive by Cornerstone being a pretty powerful skills intelligence engine. And the numbers were starkly similar and as we were thinking about this. So it made more sense than not instead of solving some of these on a standalone basis, how do we partner with a larger group, an effort that is happening for this to actually transform the world to the best of our ability there. So thing number one is that the 90% predominantly resonated with almost all of us. Our own reports show that there was a 411% jump in Gen AI skills requirement, equivalent 90% skills being turned around their head, which both as not only as a skills benchmarking and an intelligence company, but also someone can help plug that gap, plug the skills gap through learning inside and outside the company to your point, Lydia. It became imperative that we joined this powerful consortium for us to contribute in our way to how we can change the world.
At Cisco, we did a couple examples to share. One is just sort of baseline. We use the skills to help inform building out an AI for everyone learning program. So we use that as the baseline to really define what do we need to be able to teach everybody across our organization, and how do we create more of a micro-burst type of learning strategy where people can learn a little bit and then practice it and learn a little bit and practice it, and then enable some of that kind of team-based learning as well. And so we've kind of developed the learning program around the findings of the report. Aside from that, we also have what we call an AI talent strategy for our workforce planning purposes. And so we have, in the learning space, partnered with the workforce planning group and our TA group to use the insights to help inform how we can build out complete workforce strategies. And so we've taken the data insights in, and we've built out our own LLM model that kind of replicates the breaking down of job roles into tasks and mapping them over into skills. And so we use those skills insights, and we study them kind of on a quarter-by-quarter basis to really help inform, does a skill profile exist externally where we can recruit it, or do we want to become much more surgical about upskilling or reskilling different pockets of our organization where we see those roles evolving the most? So that's sort of how we've been using the research findings within Cisco. So moving on, as we prepare the workforce for AI, it involves more than just adopting the technology, and there's a human factor that is considered in all of this, and we saw it in the report findings that those durable skills were increasingly important. So as we think about leaders and individual contributors, and one of the key questions that we're going to be studying in this next phase of the report, we need to think about how their roles and the skills that they need to develop might be different. So with that in mind, what skills do you think will be critical for leaders and individual contributors due to the advancements of AI?
I can go first again. You mentioned it, right? Durable skills. The technology skills are advancing, so as the technology rapidly advances, so do the skills that are attached to them. So the durable skills, communications, collaboration, project management, those are the ones that are, in Europe they call transversal. They are true across job roles, across sectors. So it's making sure that you understand those and that you are able to practice them, and then you will have to constantly refresh your technology skills. So it's not as though a degree is the end. The degree may be the beginning, and it may not be always a degree, it's plus, right? We work with a lot of universities that integrate digital credentials into their degree pathways because they know people need industry-recognized skills and credentials along with a degree, and if you step out of your degree pathway, you're leaving with more than just debt, right? You're leaving with a credential, you may come back. But it's important for us to think about that combination of durable skills and technical skills. It's not one or the other, and I think there's been this shift, right? We understand the technical skills are changing rapidly, and the durable skills are constant and more important. That human layer on top of the technology.
Yeah, totally agree. I think the way we think about it is on top of AI skill, tech, non-tech, all kinds of AI skill which comes in, and the durable skill, how do we link the two? So think about if you are an employee, AI project management is a whole new topic. People are trained on project management, but people are not trained on AI project lifecycle. Now, this is one of the big issues which we discussed with NSF and when we created National Applied AI Consortium. And as we speak, that is our biggest focus. Current workforce and future workforce, applied AI project management as a skill itself, which is a combination of the two, right? Durable skills, so all the leadership skills, collaboration, communication, empathy, all the AI tech skill, agentic AI, generative AI, non-tech, I've been explaining the biases, understanding privacy, all that, but linking the two with the project management. That's a classical example of how we believe, especially to your point, the new managers and the new leaders, they need to have a new mindset on this.
I'll elaborate, start off with a little bit of data, and then talk through what does that mean in the context of the question. In terms of data, our skills report shows that there is about 2.5x to 3x higher demand for human skills than digital skills. Just let that sink for a moment, right? Which means that in a world where knowledge is democratized, wisdom becomes important. So you think with AI and work with people. So that durability, that does not change. That demand hasn't changed. This is for very, very strong technological companies, all the way through mid-markets and small and medium-sized businesses. Number one. So now what do we do about this? Particularly in a changing landscape, the biggest advocacy that we would have for anyone dealing with this wave change is learning to learn. So how do you keep up with this pace of change and drive that adaptive ability and the inquisitiveness, the curiosity, and have the right tooling and capabilities required at your fingertips that not only is precise in how you think about learning in bite-sized chunks in the flow of work, but also how do you evolve this learning and skilling as a paradigm itself?
So at Cisco, we're spending a lot of time studying how we want to rethink and redefine work and leadership, and we see learning at the center of it. So it's very much on thread here with what we've heard. And so as we think about what does this mean for us, how is work going to change, we see that there's going to be an emphasis on dynamic teams, on teams that are a blend of human and AI. And so then we have to rethink, what does leadership mean to us in this new world of work? And so we've defined kind of what does the future Cisco leader look like, and what are the new expectations of the leader. And we really looked back, and something you said, Anshul, earlier about every job is a digital job, really it struck a chord with me, because as we think about the leader of the future, we talk about them being tech savvy and also deeply human. And we also have expanded what a leader means to us. Everybody is a leader, whether you manage people or not. So every employee up and down the stack is a leader. And so how do we build that combo of tech-savvy, deeply human leader at the individual contributor, or leading yourself, all the way up to our executives, and really thinking about what are the new expectations in this new world of work where an individual contributor might be leading an AI agent, for example, and everybody becomes a frontline leader. And so we focused in on 4 dimensions that really kind of define what that future leader looks like for us. And we look at what does the tech savviness and what does the deeply human look like. And those 4 factors are focusing on purpose. So making sure that as an executive you can express the value that your strategy and your vision is to driving the company's purpose and beyond, but also as an employee, understanding how the work that you're doing and prioritizing links to the company's purpose. And we know from loads of research that having purpose in your work gives you meaning, and it gives you that motivation to want to continue to do your best work. So that's sort of the first dimension. The second is curiosity. So how do we create this culture of curiosity where people are really expanding how they think about learning? Learning isn't sitting in a classroom. Learning is something that happens with every single work experience, and you need to think about how you can bake in space to really be intentional about where you're spending your time and your energy, but also reflecting and learning from each experience that you have. And then there's a agility and resiliency factor that we're looking at as well. So the pace of change is coming at us like a tidal wave. And that's, the pace of change today is the slowest it's going to be, right? And so how do we prepare our workforce for that's the new normal, right? That's not going to go away. And so there are skill sets that are underlying there that are going to be deeply important for us all to learn as we navigate the new normal. And then the fourth dimension is really thinking about that dynamic teaming component and how do we start to enable cross-functional teams that come together to really deliver on specific initiatives, but then disband and then reform. And what does that look like when those teams are dynamically populated by humans and AI? And so when we think about those four dimensions, we think about what does this look like when it's AI infused, and what does it look like when you're building trust within the organization. And I think that something that doesn't get talked a lot about is that trust component. And it's going to be very important for us to think about as we continue to drive adoption, because those who don't trust the AI are not going to adopt it. And so that fabric gets thread throughout that whole new definition of leadership for us at Cisco. So we've talked a lot about lifelong learning and how, learning to learn and having curiosity is going to be extremely important to us. It doesn't end at the degree, right? It continues on. And what does that look like for us as a workforce? So what does new normal look like in your organization, and how can employers across various sectors, corporations, SMEs, government agencies, NGOs, adapt to this scenario?
So at IBM, we're required to do 40 hours of learning a year. That's been the case for a long time. We call it Think 40. So what's changing for us is what it is that we're all required to learn. So we have done a company-wide WatsonX challenge where we all were required to learn the new technology, form teams, or you could submit a project on your own, and use it to solve something. It could be a challenge your own team has, automating something. It could be coming together and creating something new with social impact. It could be anything, but the purpose was take a few short modules, it was about 2 hours, form a team or create a project idea, and then try it out. So you have to come up with this way of getting people engaged. And it may be a light lift, and ideally it's with, you've got to create opportunities for people to engage with the technology and see that it can that they're capable of doing it. We had done a survey with Morning Consult, and people said, I don't see myself as a technology person. I think the training is too expensive, and I don't know where to start. And so whether you're a university, a government agency, a corporation, giving those opportunities to your employees, your learners, your staff, where to start, it can be done, and we will help you. So for us, Skills Build is the external, right, low-hanging fruit. Internally, we're required to do it through project-based learning with peers. And then there were prizes, right? So for the great projects, there were prizes, they were highlighted across the company, and we've now done this a second year in a row. But you have to get the mindset to change, right? You can't just drop in the technology or make a demand. It has to be coupled with some change management, some mindset shift, some support, and the ability to try it and with a low risk so that people are willing to adopt and continue.
You said very interesting point, actually. Technology cannot be just dropped in this context. I totally agree. Actually, learnability is a huge topic. You said that, right? We're seeing this entire shift of, instead of older paradigm of learning to work, now we are saying work to learn, right? Every moment is a learning moment. So how do you create that learning culture? But a bigger challenge, which we kind of recognize within Intel and outside for our customers, just to give a real data point, day before yesterday in the ASU+GSV show, I was talking to a customer, and the customer was explaining for unlearning, they take normally on an average 2 years. So if an engineer is trained on, let's say, Java skill of programming and coding, and now they need to kind of unlearn that skill to really have agentic AI come in, right? Or auto AI, or low-code, no-code AI skills, right? It's like a 2-year cycle for unlearn. So we cannot, in a competitive world, afford that. So that's why we had to kind of trigger this continuous learning moments right in their work, so that it doesn't look like you're creating another additional drop of technology. So be it through their day-to-day use cases, AI for sales, AI for marketing, AI for purchase, AI for finance, what does that learning moment look like, whereby they discover that, hey, low risk, I can do this, it's not difficult, I have a peer support. So creating that cultural change is a very important point, which is where we are.
It's fantastic. It's fascinating to hear about it, viewing it from the other side. So I would parse this out into 3 parts: engagement, motivation, and outcome. Engagement is exactly what you said and what you had said, Anshul and Lydia, respectively, right? This is how do you get the desire to drive self-directed learning? How do you do it in cohorts? How do you have channels and groups by which people can socially share what they do? There is 2x higher consumption of learning if it's produced by a peer, right? So that user-generated content, you're learning through that. Engagement is also how do you practice in a safe space in a VR or an AR environment where you're practicing delivering a performance feedback to someone, you're negotiating pricing strategies, you're de-escalating a customer escalation call. So how do you drive all of these in a way that is gamified, that is exciting, and that actually engages them, right? VR has 4x higher focus and retention than normal learning. So how do you enable that? The second piece is motivation. People who have a skills profile and navigate to learning from their skills profile have 10 to 20% higher engagement. That is because they're learning towards something. They're learning towards building their credentials. They're learning towards what does this mean? And how do you get to that particular point is by virtue of, the self-motivation comes from it's like MyFitnessPal or your Apple Fitness Ring, etc. I'm doing it towards hitting a particular goal, and then the outcomes come from there. And then this is also by virtue of if you actually navigate from a talent marketplace. I'm a designer, I want to become a chief product officer, and you have your talent marketplace that is underlying is skills, and then you have learning recommendations tied to that, then your motivation is skyrocketing. Your engagement is towards something, and that's learning by doing, which is not just courses or material, but it's gigs, projects, mentoring, all of the above. And then last is outcome. Does learning drive business results? Is there a change in proficiency? Are you able to fill roles faster? Are you able to retain talent more? Are you able to unleash your business outcomes ultimately? So these are, if you follow this paradigm, exactly what you all said, but from the view of someone who's actually driving the software and the change management side of things, it's fascinating to hear that.
So a couple of themes that we heard here. So starting with the change management, interestingly enough, I sat in on a panel earlier this morning with BCG who was sharing their research findings, and one of the aspects that they talked about was driving adoption. The success, those who are successful in driving adoption are those who are focused on the people and processes and systems, not on the technology. So to your point, you can't just drop the technology and say, go use it. You have to look at your infrastructure. We call it our own iOS, right, our own operating system. And so what we're doing is we're looking at our people practices, and we're trying to figure out how do we make sure that we embed the right reward and recognition. So what is incentivized, right, is usually where people find motivation, right? And so we're looking at that infrastructure to really make sure that it is reinforcing the types of behaviors and mindsets that we know are going to be critical to our success. So that was kind of one theme. And then we talk a little bit about team-based learning or cohort-based learning, but learning with and from your peers. And one of the cool pilots that we did at Cisco, or that we're starting to scale now, is something that we call teaming with AI. And it was a comprehensive approach around how do we get the everyday user to start to engage with the AI tools that we're building and launching as an organization. And then how do we get them to the point where they can work through the methodology to actually embed it into their workflows. And so it's basically a phased approach that we take intact teams through, and then there's a learning program that kind of teaches you step by step how to work your way through the framework. And there's support, right, where you can chat with each other, right? We've got collaborative, we have WebEx team space where they can share tips and tricks and practices along the way. And so that's another example of kind of how we're thinking about it. And then we're also looking as a learning organization. I mentioned that we've been partnering very closely with the workforce planning and the TA team, but we're also looking at how do we get much more embedded with the business leaders and what they're working on from a roadmap perspective, especially within IT, so that we can have a seat at the table around what technology are you looking at so that we can develop the learning in real time to be able to kind of push it out and allow for that level of experimentation and moving much more towards the experiential microburst type of learning that can be kind of just pushed out to people in the flow of the environment in which they're accustomed to working. So we've got about 10 minutes left. We can open it up for questions, or I can throw the panel a couple of bonus questions here by surprise. Does anybody have any questions?
I know we didn't cover everything. There must be burning questions.
I think she has a question.
So I can take it first and then open up to the floor. So to me, I think about it in two dimensions. One goes back to that trust factor that I was talking about. Like we have to have a culture of trust within our organization, and we have to trust that we're going to be able to use the AI responsibly and ethically. And that really is foundational in how we think about and how we train people around AI. And that is, to me, I think is fundamental in how we think about driving adoption of it. But I also think I think employers have a responsibility to explain how the roles will shift and evolve in an exciting way and show that investment, right? We heard about 40 hours of learning, right? Like show that we as an organization are invested in helping you to build the skills of the future, because it's not going to go away. And so that, I think, is our responsibility as corporate America, is to really make sure that we are getting ahead of, getting the predictive insights around how are the skills going to change, and then being able to match that with the right learning programs, and then get the workforce excited about, hey, you don't have to do this 10% of work that doesn't excite you anymore. You can focus on this 10% that does excite you, right? That problem solving, those more human skills that I think a lot of people are dying to be able to spend more time on anyway. And so I think it's really kind of doing more storytelling in that dimension, and also kind of spotlighting like where there's being positive impact. I think we've seen throughout the industry, like the technologies have come and impacted the roles, but sometimes in a very positive way. The best example I like to use, I come from a banking family, is when the ATM came on. And everyone was like, bank tellers are going to go away. They're not going to exist anymore. And they do. But their job has changed. So it's not like transactional. They are now sellers. They are now those who understand the products of the bank. They are the face in the front line of the bank. And so they still exist, but that role has just fundamentally changed over time. And that's the same thing that's going to happen with AI, with our roles.
So when I have these conversations with our customers, this is an extremely important question, and one where we answer both logically and empathetically. And towards this, Marci's example is spot on, right? Same thing with switchboard operators. We have a networking company, and we have a software company, and we have a chip manufacturing company that has grown and has orders that they are barely able to fulfill. That is the level of growth. But you don't have switchboard operators. That has transformed into these kind of roles. So we have, as a leadership, the responsibility of actually pointing out both the threat and the opportunity and paving the way for continuous learning and upskilling. Now, both from it's the smart thing to do and the right thing to do, which is upskilling our employees so that they can prepare not only for the present, but also for the future. And this is why learning and the rest of the talent management processes like career mobility cannot be decoupled. It's not one and done. So you need that path from A to B and what needs to be true for you to get to B. Because in aggregate, let's not forget that the demand is there. Whilst jobs are getting replaced, the economic indices are all showing growth right now, right? Forget last week, right? So, So the simultaneous loss of jobs and low unemployment rate is a paradox, and that happens once a decade when there is a technological inflection point. It happened, when you watch Mad Men kind of shows people plugging stuff, that goes away and something else comes up, and the society is generally, more often than not, better off for it. But only if we as leaders lean in and accept that responsibility and not say, too bad, so sad, not my problem.
Hey.
Yeah, so just to elaborate on that a little bit, I think that, you focus a lot on existing employees, right? And in that sense, AI may not replace those employees. You're trying to upskill them so they can stay. But to me, it seems that there is the big freeze, right? There is no hiring. Spotify came out today and said out loud, which I think everybody's implementing. We're trying to protect existing employees, but it means we're not hiring any new ones, and you cannot hire a new one until you prove it cannot be done by AI, right? So that means, as was discussed in other rooms, that if you're currently in college, you're kind of hosed, right? Entry-level jobs, those kids, what do you tell them? What are you going to do with entry-level jobs? What are you going to tell the kids that are juniors, seniors in college today, right? What should they do? What's your advice?
Well, as I said, I think the net jobs over a period of time, technology is a net addition in terms of job. But to explain it to a 20-year-old kid, that's not an answer, right? Yeah, today, that's absolutely right. I agree. So that's why exactly, we should not be looking at this only as a technology industry conversation. You have to have this conversation across all industries. AI-infused workforce is not an ICT conversation alone. It has to be all the jobs. And also, not just job, all livelihood. Entrepreneurship, think about that. AI plays a significant role in really enhancing entrepreneurship. So where is those conversation, right? So that's why, I totally agree with the point. Technology is very revolutionary. People and workforce are very evolutionary, right? So you have to start conversation where they are, right? So, and the job conversation, if it is only about the tech industry job, then, pressure comes in on people. Oh, am I going to get a job now? But the moment you change the conversation to the wider number of jobs or beyond to the wider work, right, there's a lot of hope. Entrepreneurship is growing in this country everywhere, right? So livelihood, all kinds of work. I have example in Houston Community College, she's there. A plumber who comes into a community college start using AI in his plumbing business and become a more productive plumber. Those are the stories to tell, and I totally agree with the point. We need to celebrate those moments, those stories, share those examples with people.
I'll add too that I think that there's as a consortium, we believe that there's an important partnership between public and private as we think about what we can do to help support globally. So students from college all the way into corporate, what can we do to help to support? And so with the first report that we launched, we actually had learning recommendations for all of the skills that were increasing in relevance, and 85% of them are free and open to the public because each of our corporations have an external arm of learning that is for social good. And so I think that there is an element that we believe as a consortium that we play a role in helping to prepare the future of our workforce. And then I think that some of us, for me in particular as the Chief Learning Officer, I'm thinking about how do we address like we've got an aging workforce that can't afford to retire, but they want to kind of not work as much, right? And then we have the students who are going to need jobs. And how might we consider moving towards more like apprenticeships, for example, so that they can learn those skill sets that are going to be required on the job once you get into a corporate type of setting. So we are thinking about it as learning leaders as we think about that partnership and how we can influence. I saw another hand.
From the lens of trying to rapidly transform your workforce, completely agree that engagement, motivation, inspiration, communication are essential. But business as usual can really get in the way. Everyone's busy, right? And if you're trying to do this fast, whether it's from fear or opportunity, what's the minimum that you found you need to mandate, right? Because you'd rather people volunteer to do it, but sometimes everyone's just too busy. So what's the minimum mandate?
I think there are a lot of different approaches to this. IBM has taken more of a carrot than a stick approach. They've provided the learning opportunities for us. They've given us time to actually engage in learning opportunities, and then expected and encouraged us to continue that learning all the time, all year. It's an extension of the Think 40 hours, but there have been specific AI skilling opportunities by team, company-wide. There have been prizes attached to it. We were asked to share our stories with our peers, engage our peers, and then we're challenged inside our departments, right? These are not external goals, but if you automated 30% of your job, what would you do? What would you change? What would you learn? How would you use this time differently? And so we're challenging ourselves with those questions as teams. How could this change how our team, our division can get work done? We're going back to the office, so if we had less time around administrative tasks, more things that were automated, we can spend more time ideating as a team. So it's not often a losing proposition. This is how do we work better together? And we have to free up the time in order to do that, but you have to know how to use the technology in order to do that.
Yeah, I think that we as well, we use more of the carrot versus the stick approach, but we also embed, so like we're working on like flagship leadership programming that would be required before you could be considered for a promotion, for example, right? And so that flagship programming is an integration of the deeply human and the tech savvy skills combined. And so we emphasize, how do you work? How are you a team member on a dynamic team that includes AI? What does it look to have curiosity in a team, right? So that we talk about learn fearlessly, like have the safe space to be able to experiment, fail fast to learn faster. So that's all embedded into that flagship programming that is required to move in your career. And so that is kind of how we mandate it. And then there are, to Sonia's point, there are Lydia's point, sorry. Sonia's on her team. There are AI-specific things that we are pushing out that we are requiring of people. So responsible AI, for example, is a requirement of everybody across our company. So there are things like that we kind of put into the compliance bucket of learning. All right, well, I think that we are at time, so thank you all for joining us. I encourage you all to check out the AI ICT Consortium's report, and if you have any questions, stick around. Thank you.